Danny was wanting to ask his dad about something, and Jack began showing off the Spectre Speeder, assuming he was curious about that. When Maddie walked downstairs asking if there was something that Jack was forgetting, but they'd seemed to have forgotten, as she was getting angry that he'd seemed to have forgot. But then Jack tells her that he didn't forget, they have reservations for 2 for tonight at a high-end restaurant. Maddie seemed relieved that Jack hadn't forgotten for the 18th year in a row, and began to head off. Danny questioned how he remembered since his dad usually was forgetful, and Jack told him that he set a reminder on the system, 1 a week in advance and 1 for the day of. That way he wouldn't forget again after what happened last year. We later on, the day after their anniversary, see Maddie preparing to head on out as she was packing stuff into a suitcase, which Jack actually had forgotten about, since he didn't have any reminders on why she was leaving. Maddie reminding him that she was going to visit her sister and about the divorce as she'd finished packing, walking out to a waiting cab. Danny asked Jazz what that was about, and she reminded him about their mom going to visit their aunt, to which Danny then remembers that their Aunt Alicia had been divorced sometime that month. Also, as they were preparing to head out to school, packing their school stuff. Jack telling the kids that he was going to finish up work on the Spectre Speeder, then be headed off to help their mother with what she's doing. We then move on to Danny dealing with cleaning the place up, actually using his ghost powers to get up to vacuum the walls and ceiling, helping keep the place clean, when he'd gotten a phone call from Jazz, who asked Danny to turn off the noise as he's apologized, saying that he was trying to help keep the place clean, turning off the vacuum to talk to his sister. She told him that she was going to be studying at the library for a bit, no parties while she's there. Shrugging, Danny said he was just gonna order pizza when he was done, and his sister told him that she didn't blame them. All the weird stuff in the fridge, then let him get back to it as they hung up, and he finished in the living room before heading down to the lab, seeing how crazy it was down there. Seeing the mess, he'd figured that he was gonna need some help, and wondered if he could do that trick Plasmius had showed him, trying to duplicate himself. He'd only managed to grow an extra arm from his shoulder and freaked out, trying to undo it, making the extra limb vanish. He'd groaned in annoyance and blasted some of the garbage with his ghost ray out of frustration, which made the garbage bounce into the garbage can. Smiling, he then proceeded to use his ghost rays to clean up the place, doing a fairly decent job, but accidentally knocked something wrapped up like a gift into the ghost zone, and read the card that had fallen off, finding out that it was meant for his aunt, and so went into the ghost zone to retrieve it. Danny checks a couple of doors, and the box ghost appears, annoying him as they began their ramblings, though that does give him an idea, and says that the box ghost has power over all boxes, right? To which they responded that they do, though confused, and then Danny asked if he'd seen one that was wrapped like a present that may have come to the ghost zone through the Fenton portal. Surprisingly, they are helpful in showing him where all things lost in the ghost zone end up, though they soon hear sirens, with the box ghost telling Danny that he needed to flee, but was shot in the back by some sort of strange ray that put cuffs around them, and before Danny could react, so was he. They find a ghost in mostly white, telling them that trespassing was against the rules. The two are taken to a ghost prison where Skulker, Technus, and a bunch of other ghosts that Danny had beaten were waiting. They'd welcomed him to prison, looking ready for a fight, as Danny was taken off to the ghost warden's office, as we see that the mostly white wearing ghost introducing himself as Walker. They began reading off Danny's information that they did have for his supposed crimes, and Danny telling him that he just wants to get the contraband and leave, though they tell him that's against the rules, but since it's a first offense, he'll be lenient, before charging Danny 1,000 years in his prison. Danny was then shown to his cell, where Skulker was on the top bunk, the guards telling them to play nice before laughing and floating away. The hunter was about to hit Danny, but our half-ghost told him to wait a moment, putting up his hands defensively, making them stop and look at him curious. Danny asked about the collars, and they told him that they cancel out ghost abilities. Our hero then tells them that he has an idea. Skulker was left with his exosuit, and the hunter asked what his point was, to which Danny then said that the suit wasn't actually a part of his real body. And if he remembered correctly, the real body was in the head, right? The hunter was getting agitated, asking Danny what his point was, and Danny asked what if he could just simply pop the head off the suit. Realizing what Danny was saying, the hunter agreed to his idea, and the two worked together to pop the head off of the suit, allowing the real Skulker to get free. Danny then said that he'd take the exosuit with him to chow time, and meanwhile the real Skulker could get to the main office and shut down the collars and cuffs around them. The ghost hunter then asked why they would do that when they could simply slip away before anyone noticed anything, to which Danny then asked if he really wanted Walker to be the one to have captured his prey. Thinking about this for a moment, they told him good point, and went invisible as the guards showed up to take Danny and Skulker away to chow time. Danny hauled the exosuit to the cafeteria as Skulker then got to the controls and unlocked all their shackles and collars, starting an all-out brawl against the guards, with Walker running off to the cafeteria with Danny slipping away, returning their exosuit as he told them good luck and flew off to Walker's office to grab the gift and get out. While reaching for the gift, our hero was thrown against the wall, with Walker asking if he thought that they wouldn't figure out his plan, to which Danny then gets annoyed and yells to leave him alone as some sort of energy came from him, much like when he first fought Skulker, though only enough to knock Walker back before cutting off. Danny seemed confused by that, but shook his head, deciding to try to figure that out later. Grabbing the gift and escaping the prison, we then cut to after all that was over, as Jazz and Danny were joining in the festivities, handing over the present to their aunt with the card that had fallen off earlier, and they all had a great time celebrating their aunt's divorce.